Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending December 17th. We've got a big show tonight. As usual, we've got William Bernanke from CG Analytics. He's going to join us in a moment, tell us where the money is going on the college and NFL action this week. We're going to talk about the bowl games as well. And I'll even throw him a question I didn't send him, but I think it'll be an easy answer for him. I'm going to ask him about the Vegas Knights. We've got Handicappers Corner once again this week. We've got college bowl action we'll preview. We've got 4 big games we're going to take a look at in the NFL, all of them with playoff implications. And then, of course, at the end of the show, best bets as we always do. Dave Cokin, Ralph Michaels are joining me tonight in studio. Mark Seidel is behind the controls, making sure we sound good. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. So let's get this party started, and we're going to kick it off. Ralph has something to say here. He's just chomping at the bit. Ralph, what do you got?
You know, Will, tonight's such a big Thursday night game. I know when people are hearing this, they're going to have heard it once the game has started or after the game. But what has the late money done with this injury situation and the running backs for this huge AFC West matchup?
We've had a tale of two games in one game, so to speak here. As far as like the point spread, the Chiefs are seeing about 60% of the money, but on the money line, which is way bigger handle, which is unusual, right, for any game, any football game, or any game with the money line and point spread. The handle is about 5 or 6 times higher right now, and the majority of the money's on the Chargers. It looks like about 68% of the cash coming in the Chargers taking that plus money. So that's what we're seeing right now.
Hey, Will, welcome to joining the show. Ralph was just so excited to get you there. I didn't even get to introduce you, but welcome to the show once again, Ralph. And I wanted to ask you before we get into the football. Here in Vegas, we've become, a hockey town in a matter of a season and a half. And the Golden Knights this year, not the Magic so far that they had last year, but they are getting hot right now. And this all coincided with them getting Nate Smith back from the suspension. Has the handle here locally on the Knights games, has it picked up? I know it's not what it was last year, but are you seeing action flying in back now on the Knights?
Yeah, certainly not as much, on futures, but game by game basis. For example, last night our handle was was a short card in hockey. As you know, the Knights did 2 times more handle than the second biggest handle game, which was the Penguins, and unfortunately, they beat my Islanders, but the handle's there, and that's a road game at an early start. So their home games with the primetime start are seeing 2 to 3 times more handle we saw last night. So definitely the game-by-game handle is much getting bigger and bigger.
We're accustomed to the Knights, people betting them as the favorite at home. Has that transferred over, and now they're not afraid to bet them as a favorite on the road as well?
Yeah, and especially when you have numbers like last night where they're about $1.45, nothing crazy where bettors have to lay a big price there. They're going to jump at that right away, and the bigger, they haven't been a huge favorite on their own anyway. But if that does come to pass, I don't think bettors will be scared off on it. They'll just go to the puck line. Yeah,
and speaking of that puck line, Will, it just seems like every time I sit down and watch a game with the Knights at home, they manage to get that last empty netter in there in the last 15 seconds, and I know that just got to break you guys' hearts. As much as you're rooting for the Knights to do well here in Vegas, that puck line, how much of a difference in the handle would you say when the puck line cash is compared to if the Knights just win the game by 1? When they're playing at home.
Yeah, not as much as you may think. I'd say if, the handles, let's say, just using a number here at the top of my head, 10,000 is the handle, for instance. About 20% of that is puck line, and then the rest of it's all either a parlay, on the game itself or just a straight bet on the actual just side, laying the price.
Okay, well, let's get to NFL and college action, and we got to start with last week, how the books fared last week, and I'm pretty sure it was a nice week for the books because anytime you get the Patriots losing outright, it is always going to be a good day for the sports books.
Yeah, everything kind of fell into place for the most part correctly for us. It was a good rhythm to it, if that makes sense. And it started on Thursday night with the Jaguars-Titans game going over the total. That was huge for us. There was a lot of under money, and you can understand why that game crept over. Really, it was kind of a miracle over, as you remember, with all those long touchdown runs, because that game's played out 100 times. It probably goes under maybe 80-90% of the time. But that was huge. Good start to the week. And some of the other good results were some strange ones here. The Jets winning outright. We saw the line movement, but that game had one of our biggest handle games was the Jets-Bills, believe it or not. A lot of money on Buffalo. That winning outright, that game going over as well. The Bears winning, of course, on Sunday night was a good result. The Giants, coming in was a good result as well. And then the Bengals also covering that huge number late there, almost wiped out teasers on that game. And that was huge. And then some of the bad results for us with the Lions winning. We saw that big line move. That was a liability. The Raiders winning, believe it or not, as a dog. Most of the money came in on Oakland, and that was a tough one for us. And Seattle Monday night wasn't the greatest result as well.
Well, Will, now we're to the bowl season on Saturday. A nice Saturday card starting, including the Las Vegas Bowl. Overall, which bowl games have attracted the most action? I know a lot of these smaller bowls you probably don't get much until the game of, but are there any bowl games sticking out besides the championship games that have drawn attention or have a significant handle you might have not expected?
Yeah, there's certainly one sticks out on Saturday that's seen the largest handle right now, and some respected money as well. The North Texas Utah State game, we're seeing some respected money on North Texas, and as you can see in the line move as well. And that's right now slightly our largest handle, followed by the Fresno State game in Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan playing Georgia Southern. That's right, Fresno State, Arizona State.
Looking beyond Saturday bowl action, are there any bowl games so far that you guys have taken some serious sharp money on that you respect?
Two games of note. It hasn't been as much as I thought, not yet at least. I think that'll pick up a week from today when we're sitting here, or Wednesday. We'll have a lot more to talk about when it comes to some respected money. But Virginia Tech and Alabama have seen some so far. Alabama, it'd be hard to tell with the line with Virginia Tech. You could probably see it there.
What about the Ohio State game? Is that money that, moved because of the Urban Meyer news? Or, that opened 3.5 or 4, I think, up now, closing in on a touchdown. Is that just public money jumping in on that Urban Meyer situation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely just public money as of now. I think the Sharps might be waiting for Washington to get to 7, a hard 7, and they probably would jump on that. I don't think they would back Ohio State here. I think this is my guess. I could be wrong, of course, but I think they're looking at this as maybe an overreaction to the situation, and Washington maybe be in the right side at a touchdown or higher.
Now looking at the NFL, we talked about the Thursday game, and I think that's good insight for our customers, especially, that's surprising to hear that money line handle is more than an ATS handle. I would have never bet that in my life. And, we're talking about Houston and the Jets and Cleveland at Denver. Of course, I'm from Cleveland. I'm a Browns fan. And for us to be talking about the Browns in December just makes me happy because they're at least a bit relevant. Oh, yeah. I mean, night and day once they relieved Hugh Jackson of his duties, and now that, they have Greg Williams in there, it looks like they're a different team. This is the Browns team I've seen on the field for years. I can't remember when they've looked this potent, shall I say, on offense. And as far as that game, what we're seeing here, and it's funny, with Cleveland, the better they play, it seems like bettors are not respecting Cleveland still. It's ironic, because when they had Hugh Jackson there, they were betting him all the time. Now that he's gone, it seems like they're not betting them. And all of last year, right?
Yeah, they were betting them all of last year. Now that they look good and they're competitive, winning games, it seems like bettors are shying away from them. I don't know why. I don't want to begin to know why. But as far as seeing Denver money here, 80% of the early action is, so it is very early, but the early action's on Denver. And as far as the other game, Houston Jets, that's running fairly even right now. The Jets had some injuries. I think bettors maybe are just waiting on, injuries on their part.
Before we do the entire card on Sunday in the NFL, there's one game in particular I want to talk to you about, Will, because this is a game that I'm going to have a lot of interest in watching, and I think it's going to be probably the heaviest bet game of the Sunday card, maybe the Sunday night game, but you've got a big number on that Sunday night game. New England, Pittsburgh, It's the 4 o'clock game on the East Coast, 1 o'clock, 1:25 out here. There's only one other game on at that time, kind of an oddity this week in the schedule because we have those 2 Saturday games. There's only 2 late afternoon games. So it's going to get all the attention. Is this the biggest handle game so far, and where is the money going in this one?
Not the biggest handle so far, I think, because of it coming up so late, coming out so late as far as the opening number. But we are seeing just so far all New England money. 96% of the cash is all on New England, and it appears to be public money so far. But I definitely expect to see Steeler buyback when this line hits 3, and I think it will at some point, sooner than later. But right now the handle is about middle level handle.
And that's another interesting note for our listeners. You're getting 96% on one team, but because it's public money, the line really doesn't change. You get 1 or 2 bets from respected bettors, and you're going to move the line. So sometimes people think, the line move, dictates how much volume is on the game, when that's not true at all.
No, the lines will certainly move a little more freely, in college especially, not as much in the NFL because points are a little bit more at a premium, and they're just more important, as we know, so sometimes all too well. But early in the week you'll see a little bit freer moves, and then as the week goes on, the handle becomes bigger. It'll take a lot more to move a line, and you won't see as like a Bengals and Chargers situation last week, which that line just kept driving up, and that was just all money doing it, and even day of game, massive amounts.
Well, besides Marco's Steelers against his nemesis Patriots, what other games on Sunday are getting action, and which ones have some sharp money their way?
Well, we've seen some respected money on only 2 teams thus far, and that's Tampa Bay and the 49ers again. 49ers, I think bettors are just backing them. They look like they're not quitting in a divisional game. You got Seattle on the short week. I think that angle might be one they're looking at here. And Tampa Bay, I think this is just I think people like what they've seen from them, even though they didn't cover last week. They hung in there for the most of the game, and the Ravens are laying a pretty big number here. 8, I think it's -8, and I think bettors are looking at that. But as far as other big handles this week are lopsided action. There was a couple of games here. The Seattle games, actually, the action's all on 49ers thus far, but that should change come game day, and as well. The Lions and Bills, again, the Lions are involved, and the Bills are seeing the action here. The Bills are seeing about 82% of the cash, and their bettors are going against the Lions where they were on them last week.
Yeah, I can understand. Well, they're looking at it. The Lions, and I was one of the ones on the Lions last week, Will. That was absolute torture of a game to watch. I mean, the Lions, 7 of their points came on a pick 6, a horrible pick 6. So basically, it was a 10-3 ball game if you just take the offenses and take that one defensive score out of it. And Arizona just struggled to move the football, but Matthew Stafford's not 100%. He couldn't get anything downfield. I think he had like 100 yards passing in the game. Just not a fun game to watch. And that 49er game, as far as Seattle goes, you talked about the short week, Will. That's for sure. But I think the bigger thing there is that win over Minnesota basically guarantees Seattle the number 1 spot as far as the wild cards. Because the teams that are chasing Seattle, Minnesota, Carolina's still alive in that mix. Seattle has beaten them head-to-head.
Yep.
And so it just doesn't, they've got the inside track to the number 1 spot.
Yeah, this game is in a necessity, especially after seeing the early results. That'll dictate a lot, too, with this line in this game, what happens earlier or Saturday and today. I'm sorry, and Sunday. What happens before that game. So that'll kind of lead into what they need to do there in that game. I'm sure they'll need to win just to wrap up a spot or be in a good position. But you'll certainly know more after the 10 o'clock games.
Just a point. It's very unusual. Usually the division games are a team's biggest game. But we have 2 situations this week with, Seattle off the win against Minnesota playing a division foe, and Chicago off the win against the Rams playing the Packers, that it's surprising that they're actually almost in letdown situations off their games last week.
Absolutely, yeah. In Chicago, arguably their biggest win of the year against the Rams, and they're playing the most hated rival in Green Bay, And Green Bay mathematically still alive, but we all know they're probably done. But, Green Bay might be revived here after McCarthy being fired. And the interesting thing about this game, first thing that stood out was the look-ahead line, I believe, over the summer. I could be wrong, but I think it was Green Bay was -2 or 2.5. So you see about an 8-point swing in the line from then to what you see now, which is pretty massive when it comes to those two teams.
Absolutely, and nobody thought Green Bay was going to be as bad as they were this year. And although I think everybody felt the Bears were going to be improved, I don't think anybody saw this coming to this degree.
That's what Khalil Mack will do. No one thought, no one knew about the Khalil Mack situation.
Absolutely solidified an already good defense and made it a great defense. So no question about it. Hey, Will, as always, thanks for stopping by. And we want to tell people, get the app. You stop in at any of you guys' locations. Takes 5 minutes to download the app and get signed up. Even if you're not a Nevada resident, I can't stress this enough. I have people come in, friends all the time, and I tell them, listen, you want to enjoy yourself while you're here and you want to play the games. Don't tie yourself to having to be sitting there at the sports book. Get the app, load it up, put your money in that you want to go with, and then just play all weekend. When you're done, go to the window. It's just like cashing the tickets once. Take all the money out of your account, go home, weekend's done. No fuss, no muss. And you know what? It's also safer because you don't want to be carrying all your cash around with you, And if your money's in your app, you can be playing your games. You won't be spending it at the strip clubs.
Who hasn't had a few two cocktails and lost a sportsbook ticket? You always lose the winners. You never lose the losers.
Well, you can't lose it on the app, and also we'll be having a brand new upgraded app on the I believe 18th and 19th. So
nice
for people coming in, right around the holidays, we'll have an even better app than we have now. So if that's what you've had before, just have something much easier to use and better features and just everything an upgrade.
And, of course, every Sunday morning, if you like what Will does for us here on Thursday, hey, we're handcuffing him. He's, we're doing this on Thursday for the, the Sunday games, Saturday games. You tune in Sunday morning about 90 minutes before kickoff. You're going to get the latest numbers. Him and Kelly do it every week, the 2-minute warning. Will run down where that sharp money's at, where the public money's at, and get to look at Will and Kelly for a couple minutes on Sunday. That's always a good way to start your Sunday mornings with good information from good people.
Yeah, we love it. Get the last-second look at how the action's going on game day and what we need and where the respective money's flowing. And I also want to mention to everybody, guarantee the audio will be back to normal this week. I know we had some problems last week. Worked out the kinks. Had some Wi-Fi issues, but now we fixed that this week, so everything will be on the up and up and, spot on.
Sounds good, Will. Hey, as always, buddy, thanks for taking the time to stop in and chat with us. We love going behind the counter, and we appreciate you sharing the information with us. We'll talk to you next week, and good luck this weekend on all the games except the ones I'm on.
Likewise. Always a pleasure, Marco and Ralph. Have a great day.
All right. Take care. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it is Handicappers Corner up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's time for Handicappers Corner. We like to try to educate you on some different angles, sometimes blowing up some myths that, you might think something goes one way, and then once you actually run the numbers, you find out, no, that's not the case. And that's why we've got our man, Ralph Michaels. And before we jump into these, want to tell you guys about a special offer this week at WagerTalk. Hey, a month of service, 30 days, $325. That's a savings in itself because, if you buy one guy, you buy his best bet every day, you're going to spend $20, $25, or $30 a day. So $325 for 30 days is a huge savings. But we're going to give you an even better savings. And what better time to do it than right now, guys? From Saturday, I think, until New Year's Day, there's football every single day, Ralph. We only got one day that there isn't football. And then, of course, we've got basketball, NBA action, college hoops. We've got NFL action, hockey on a nightly basis. We've got our guys, Carmine and different guys that do the soccer. There's plays all over the place. It's a jam-packed 30-day package. Get it right now if you use coupon code TV225. That's TV225. You can pick up a 30-day package. Pick your favorite capper. I'll tell you right now, we have been running, knock on wood, we've been running real good. Our NBA has been fantastic. I've been locked into the NBA. I'll get more into college basketball once we get into conference play. I love to play conference play better. We've had this year, oddly enough, some of the conferences, I know the Big Ten's played some games already.
Yeah, the Big Ten went to a 20-game conference schedule. So this year, they've always gone 18, so they went to 20, and they didn't want teams playing without the kids in school, without the fans being available during the holidays, or with finals, so they played 2 games early in December, and then they'll pick up the rest of their games after. So it's given them some great exposure. They got a lot of national coverage for that week, so it turned out to be a very savvy move for the Big Ten.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I know a couple of the coaches I had read, they really didn't like the break in the continuity. They like to get that, once they get into the conference schedule, they want to run through it, and they like to have those early December games. Some of the guys like little sisters of the poor, and so we'll see how that works out and plays out for them. But, Ralph, you've got some angles for us again this week, and when we talked about what we wanted to cover this week, I threw out to you that we're in the final, few weeks of the season, and I wanted to see if there's some different tendencies when we get to the month of December, those final weeks, teams with, winning records or whatever. And you pulled some data. The first set of numbers we're going to look at, all of these are going to be from the 2014 season through now. And, Ralph, kick off the first one that you got for us.
Marco, before I get to that one, I just want to talk about one of those myths we debunked. I was on Cup of Joe and Pros with the Prez on Wednesday, and he had done his NFL presentation.
The presidential address, yes.
Address with Kelly. And he had a lot of comments that, we all know about New England off a loss, but he had comments that teams play very poorly after upsetting New England. Well, Miami is 0-3 straight up in ATS upsetting New England. But I went back to 2014 while we were on the show. Teams are actually 13-12 straight up, 12-12-1 against the spread after beating New England, and that includes the Miami 0-3. And over the last 4 years, teams are actually 8-4 ATS the week after beating the Patriots. So, again, just another myth debunked with that.
Which common sense would make you think the way that guy thought, that there would be the natural letdown after that.
Don't bet it unless you have the facts. Reach out. @CalSportsLV is my Twitter. I answered probably 8 or 10 questions today. I don't have the ability to answer every question if you pick some scenarios that I can't find, but I am happy to. Shoot me, reach out on Twitter, ask me a question, happy to get back to you. Now, one thing before we get to that 2014 that doesn't involve this week yet, but I wanted to look at how teams do with 3 wins or less. And you're a favorite in December. Well, those teams that have 3 wins or less and are a favorite in December are actually 13-4 straight up, 11-5-1 against the spread, 69%. There's none this week, but make sure you circle that and keep it for the next few weeks. If any of those very poor teams are playing, obviously you're playing a very poor team or a team that's on a downslide, and those teams want to win games. There's tanking in other sports, but in the NFL, you get, usually those teams that are playing hard want to play hard. Now, looking at some of those things Marco said, since 2014, these are the differences between September through November and just December. And the first is just away favorites. Away favorites, September through November, 131 and 144, 47.6%. December away favorites, 60 and 49, 55%. So again, 55% isn't a wow, going to get you rich number, but it's 7.4% better than those other numbers. So if you've been burned with some away favorites and you like a team in December that is an away favorite, now would be the time. It's okay to play them. They've historically done well.
Now you switch that to double-digit favorites, September through November. These are away favorites. 8-4-1 in the early months. December double-digit favorites are only 4-4, 50% after that. And I think probably, Ralph, that's going to go to having if you're an away favorite and you're a double-digit away favorite, you're one of the elite teams in the NFL, and you're paying everybody knows you're an elite team at that point. You're paying a premium for that team.
And, let's just get the win and let's get out. We've got another game to work on. So I agree, double-digit away favorites are something that we've talked about. But.
And that's something that, we always tell you, don't just blindly play, a trend or an angle. Stop and look at that trend and angle and say, where does it make sense? Is there something to that? And like I just said there, immediately that's the first thing that jumped out to me as far as the December, why it doesn't have the same record that it has earlier in the year.
Marco, now I want to look at teams, switching to over-unders. And over-unders, if you're going to play a game and the line is between +3 and -3. Well, we've seen historic scoring. We've seen historic totals. We've seen everyone betting overs because of the LA Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs and that situation. So if you're playing a team that is equal to you as far as performance, so the line is +3 to -3, September through November, since 2014, they've gone over 53%. 394 games have gone over. 350 have gone over. There's 22 pushes. You get to December, you start factoring weather. A lot of people don't factor in weather until they see this huge snowstorm. Well, you get December winds. That means a lot more than snowstorms. So December, the weather is worse. You have teams playing later at the end of the year. You have teams that are more familiar with each other. December over-unders when the line is +3 to -3, 42.1% to the over. So 58% to the under, going 80 and 110. That's an 11-point difference from the rest of the season, something to keep an eye on.
And as you said, okay, what makes sense about that angle? You said right away, weather is a big factor second half of the year. Well, I'll give you another big factor. If it's the second half of the year, you're going to have a lot of the second meetings between the two teams.
We did that. We did a breakdown on another show, and every scenario, if you lost the first game as a home favorite, lost the first game as a home dog, won the first game, every scenario, it was like a 47% just blindly playing. If you bet the over, it was 47% or 53% to the under. Great point.
Yes, absolutely. So, again, look at these angles. Where does the sense come from on them? Another over-under angle that you had was when you have a double-digit home favorite. Now, through the months of September through November, 29, 28, basically 50%, 50.9%. However, December, double-digit home favorites. All of a sudden, the over 11, unders 19. That bottoms out at 36.7 if you're betting the overs. But we're telling you
significant difference.
Yeah, we're telling you to take the unders once again, and you would be cashing at a 63.3 clip, and that is damn good, my friends. And again, it makes sense in the December games for everything that we just said.
Yeah, you've got injuries, you got people worn down. You don't have those big plays as much. You're just trying to run out the clock. Absolutely. These next scenarios, I went back a little further, and they're since 2010. Now, this is if you're off a loss as a favorite, and the line is between +3 and -3. So, obviously, you had a disappointing game last week. You're playing a very close game this week. That is, one team that comes to mind is the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, September through November. Those teams off a loss as a favorite, playing an equal type foe with the lines between the threes, 47.6%. Later in the year, the games may mean a little more. You are off a loss as a favorite. It stings. In December, you're 35 and 23, 60%, a 12.7% difference between those early months till the last month of the season.
And one of the things I just want to clarify there. I do this a lot whenever I'm putting a trend in with my analysis, and I always say, I do it in baseball, I do it in football. In football, I say in a competitively priced game, is that +3 to -3, because basically you're saying these two teams are about the same. It's the home field advantage, or that, or not a big deal. In baseball, I'll do it, -125 either way, because again, you're basically just factoring in.
It'd probably be +3 or 4 points in that range. Yeah.
So, you're looking competitively priced games, they're a different handicap. Same way as the double-digit games are, you want to look at the different parameters. And so that's the angles that we look at going off a loss and now a favorite. Looking at this one here from 2010, in those early months from September through November, 120 wins, 132 losses, 10 pushes, 47.6.
So basically even. You're off a loss, now you're favored. It's basically a toss-up game, a little bit to the negative.
But in December, 48 and 32 and 60%. We all know if we can go 60%, you're never working a day in your life if all your bets are winning at a 60% clip. You're making a lot of money. First thing that jumps out to me when I see this angle is you say, what makes sense? Well, in those early months, especially I would think in September and October, the true identities of the teams we don't know yet. In September, it's public perception. It's what you read about in the offseason. It's who got the big draft picks, who got the big free agent signings. Perfect example this year. We talked many times about the Minnesota Vikings, how high the expectations were on the Vikings this year because of the signing of Kirk Cousins. Well, that's going to inflate those lines early on in the season because all you have to work with is speculation. And speculation is usually wrong, and Vegas knows that the public's going to jump on the hype bandwagon. So that makes sense why they don't cover at the rate they do then. But later in the year, I like to use the phrase, the cream rises to the top. You know where these teams are at. And it makes sense that the favorites come in at a better number there.
Marco, we're saving the biggest variance for last. And while it doesn't have as many parameters, it's obvious why. Teams off a straight-up loss, and now they're a double-digit favorite. September through November, they're 14-12, 53.8%. You're off a loss, you're a double-digit favorite. You look at those lines now in September, how many times do you say, oh, my God, if that were the line now, you'd be crazy. Arizona was supposed to be a decent team. Other teams, the Browns were supposed to be horrific with a rookie quarterback. Now we've seen them play. But in December, teams off a loss and a double-digit favorite. Well, that means if you're probably a double-digit favorite, you're a team going to the playoffs, or you're a team fighting for a playoff berth. September through November, again, 14-12, 53.8%. December teams off a straight-up loss and now a double-digit favorite, 11-2, 84.6%. Oh, yeah, and by the way, that is now the Rams with the Wentz injury. They are now 11-point favorite. That would fit that scenario this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to think that the Rams, my God, if there's ever a team that comes in an angry mood this week, it's got to be the Rams. I mean, they were taken out behind the woodshed. I mean, it wasn't a lopsided score, but they never got on the scoreboard. The Chicago defense.
The final score didn't matter. Yeah, when you can barely cross midfield.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I said it on a couple of the shows this week, Ralph. For the first time, Jared Goff looked like Jared Goff under Jeff Fisher. He had no clue what he was doing on that field. Bad interceptions last week, 4 interceptions.
Horrible throws.
Yeah, he totally looked.
The Rams' defense played well. Trubisky had 3 or 4 interceptions as well, but
unbelievable. We'll see what they do this week against Philadelphia. And it's kind of ironic that Wentz is out this week playing the Rams because this is the team that last year when they went to the Rams late into, I actually think it was about this week last year too, around I think it was December 10th or something. He played the Rams, and that's when he, on that touchdown play.
I didn't know that. He got hurt against them.
He got hurt against the Rams. He dove into the end zone for the touchdown, and that's when he blew out the knee, scoring the touchdown. And he actually came back, I think, for tried to go a series, the next series and couldn't. But that was the end of his season last year. And right now, if they don't win this game this week, they're going to pull the plug on him, which they should. Why get him hurt?
I've heard that it's pulled already.
It's already pulled?
He had a CT scan, and he has a spine injury that needs rest, and he's probably out for the rest of the regular season no matter what, even if they wanted to play.
Even if they win. Because if they lose, the season's over, so it doesn't matter. All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap up Handicappers Corner. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the college bowl games. We've got 2 bowl games this week we're going to take a look at as the bowl season kicks off this Saturday. And as we said, there's going to be bowl games every day. Be excited about that. And we're going to take a look at a couple of them coming up for Saturday. One of them right here in Las Vegas. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's time for college action. And before we get into today's college games, I want to tell you this segment is sponsored by uwager.eu. Get a 50% sign-up bonus using promo code WT50 when signing up. Be sure to use the link at WagerTalk and you get that 50% sign-up bonus with WT50. This is an offer exclusive to our WagerTalk listeners. All right, guys, college football Saturday. The bowl games kick off, guys, and we're going to start things off with the one right here in our backyard. As you said, Dave, on the radio show the other day, not exactly our backyard, but it is across the other side of town. Yeah. Sam Boyd Stadium. The Las Vegas Bowl got Arizona State with first-year head coach Herm Edwards and Fresno State. Solid defense. That was a fun game to watch if you watched the Mountain West Championship with them in Boise.
Fun for me, anyway.
It was fun for me, too, but we sweated a little bit in that one. Little snowstorm in that one as well, but won't be any snow here in Vegas, that's for sure.
No, this is one of the more underrated bowls because it's an annual event that draws extremely well. The bowl committee here does a phenomenal job of promoting this bowl every year, and it's become a big event where the schools, look, it's in Las Vegas, so the schools are excited to be here, their fan bases are excited to be here. We're going to have another great crowd for Arizona State and Fresno State on Saturday. I think the advantages here are all on one side, but I'm not going to talk about the game as this is the game that I've had on special all week at WagerTalk. So, I don't want to upset people who've already bought it and say, hey, I could have waited and gotten it for free. And I also don't want to cause any people who haven't bought it yet
not to buy it.
Yeah, we're going to give out lots of free selections, and I've got some really good information to pass along on the New Orleans Bowl. We'll talk about shortly, but I'll sit this one out.
All right, no problem. Ralph, you look at this one. Fresno State comes in here. We know what their game is. It's defense. They play great defense. What a job Tedford's done there. Actually even heard, maybe some inklings that if this guy wanted to go to the NFL, might be a candidate. I don't know. It's a big jump from the college to the NFL, for some of these guys. But Fresno State, they're here. They're not going to be distracted by anything that goes on in Vegas. They come here, every other year, basically.
This year, won and covered against UNLV. So
Arizona State, it's a short ride to Vegas, so it's not like they're going to be distracted as well. Do you see any of those emotional edges that we look for where one team happier to be here than the other?
Well, you have to remember this is the Mountain West #1 team coming here. So this is a prideful game for the Mountain West, and they're always slated to play a Pac-12 game. The dynamics are a little different this year with the Mountain West team being favored. The Pac-12 may say, hey, we have some motivation. We're a dog to a Mountain West team. But you still have to think Fresno State might be a bit disappointed. Going into that final Saturday, they thought if UCF lost, they might be the group of 5 team to make it to this bowl. So you have some different things. We'll have to see how that plays out. As far as Fresno State being the favorite, I think they clearly they clearly deserve to be the favorite. On McMarion, their quarterback, is one of the best quarterbacks people haven't heard of, almost 4,000 yards, 70%, I think a 25-3 ratio, just against good competition. And I look at it, and, one of those things, Marco, you and I talk about Handicappers Corner often, is hearsay. And one thing I want to bring up on this bowl is people are going to say, well, Fresno is 1-7 ATS their last 7 bowl games. Well, they were 0-7 with Pat Hill, who cared about bowls as much as Mike Leach does, and now they're 1-0 with their current coach winning last year. So, again, don't look at bowl records for schools. You really have to break them out into coaches. And on the Arizona side, of course, Dave and I talked about this on the radio show today. With Harry being gone, probably going to be the number 1 receiver drafted in the NFL. To me, him and Oliver from Houston are the biggest losses, not because they're the best 2 players not playing, even Greer, maybe Greer now. Greer's the late, Greer obviously is very important. But the non-quarterback position players, the fall off from 1 to 2 is so great for him because he's such a talented wide receiver that you don't have that game maker to fill in the slot where you do with some offensive linemen, running back, and even defensive linemen.
I agree with you here. I look at the defensive side of the ball here, and Fresno State's just so dominant. Again, people will say, well, look at the competition. Well, this is a team that stepped out of conference at the beginning of the year. They went on the road and played at Minnesota. Granted, Minnesota wasn't a great team, but still it was a step up in conference, and it was a road game. They went on the road, and they shut down a UCLA team. Granted, UCLA, new head coach, learning the system, but still, you went on the road and faced a Pac-12
you
school.
go to the Rose Bowl, your kids aren't wide-eyed. They're ready to play against whoever they're lined up against.
So I don't think they're going to be fazed by anything. And yes, they're familiar with the surroundings here. And before we move to the next bowl game, I just want to ask you, Dave, something down the road. This has always been the first week of the bowls. We have always had the Las Vegas Bowl. Do you think moving ahead, whenever we get the new Raider Stadium, and then this game will obviously be played there, do you think this bowl gets moved to a little bit later in the season?
No.
It'll stay as one of the first? I
think it'll stay as one of the first because it's so successful in this time frame. And I do think, however, down the road we will get 2 bowl games.
A second bowl, absolutely.
We will get a playoff game or a major bowl affiliation will end up here.
All right, good stuff. All right, Dave, well, since you sat the last one out, we're going to make you start this next one.
A lot of information on this one.
In interesting ball game, the New Orleans Bowl, you've got Middle Tennessee State against Appalachian State. You look at these 2 teams rolling in here. Appalachian State, they have been a beast this year. Their only 2 losses, bringing it up here, were
Penn
very
State
impressive.
Overtime.
Penn State opener at the beginning of the season.
And their main rival on the road.
Georgia Southern, which runs, the option, different style of defending a team.
And, longtime people have to remember, in the SoCon, these 2 teams, they won the national championship every year. So they are as fierce of rivals as you get. People may not know that think they're both new Sun Belt teams, but these teams in history go back. Ohio State, Michigan, it's the same type of venom when these 2 play in the regular season.
Dave, tell us what you know.
Okay, so, if you turn back the clock 2 weeks, the first thing that came out of my thought coming out of that Middle Tennessee UAB game and the way Middle Tennessee lost the game was that, and they were just demoralized. The post-game press conference was sad. It really was sad. They wanted that game badly. And my first thought was, this is a team I want to play against in their bowl game. Everything has changed. This is just crazy what's taken place in the last 2 weeks. First of all, Middle Tennessee State's had 2 weeks to get that out of their system and get excited about this game, and it sounds like they're ready to play. The flip side is what's taken place at Appalachian State, where in the space of a couple of weeks, they've lost their head coach, who went to Louisville. He took 2 of his best assistants with him, so they're already shorthanded. And then a really bizarre occurrence, at least in my mind, took place on Wednesday, right before practice at the Superdome. Ivy is the interim coach for this game. Now, he's been there for a long time. He played his football.
9 years, D-line coach.
He played his football at Appalachian. He's been an assistant for almost a decade. In January of this past year, he was promoted to the top assistant coach slot. So you're figuring, well, okay, Satterfield's gone. You've got Ivy, who's been there. He's a lifer, okay? He's an App State lifer. He's got to be the likely candidate, top candidate, and a bowl win here would really be good for his resume in terms of getting what probably for him is his dream job. And on Wednesday, from out of nowhere, the team is informed right before they take the practice field at the Superdome that Ivy is not being considered as a candidate for the head coaching position. So now you've got...
why not wait 4 days to make that announcement?
Well, that's what I said. Because now you've got what amounts to an entire lame duck staff. I think this is a gigantic distraction for Appalachian State, and I took the 7. It's not as much a play on Middle Tennessee as it's a play against Appalachian State. They're a really good football team, okay? On paper, they're the winner of this game. But in the minor bowls, it's really information-driven. You want to find the team that either has some added reason to play or has these red flags swirling around, as I believe is now the case with the Mountaineers. I think they're a bad bet here, even though they're the better football team. Would not be surprised if Middle Tennessee gets the upset.
Would play devil's advocate for a minute. If the players like this coach, do you think they go out and play hard for him to try to make a statement?
Okay, let me ask you a question. If the players like this coach, how hard do you think they'd play for him if they thought they might be able to win him the head coaching job, as opposed to him leaving just like everybody else on the staff? If I'm a player right now, you have now lost the entire coaching staff, because you would assume that since Ivy's not going to be the candidate, well, it can't be anybody else who's currently with the program.
Right.
That would be...
Did Ivy, I don't
weird.
know this answer. Did Ivy get an offer from Satterfield to come with him?
I have no idea.
I don't know either. So
I don't know. All I know is...
The timing's ridiculous.
To me, you wait 4 days. And it means faking out the coach, Ivy, and the players, so be it. But to me, this is a disruptive situation. Look, it doesn't guarantee anything.
Right.
I mean, the team can go out there completely galvanized.
On paper,
they're
they're the best team on paper.
Yeah,
clearly.
they're the best. Oh, sure, that's why they're 7-point favorites, which is a pretty steep number. But it's just, to me, you've got to weigh the pros and cons of the information that comes through, and to me, this would fall into the negative area.
You know, you look at Middle Tennessee, and you don't have a more stable system than, you have a coach whose son has been a 4-year player who's playing his final game.
More than that, because he had an injury redshirt there.
Yeah, he's been there about 8 years.
Yeah.
But and then this year, you look at what they did. They went to Kentucky. They played well yardage-wise. They gave up some bad plays. They went to Vanderbilt, played well yardage. If you look at the scores, it doesn't show how well they played. And they went to Georgia. So you went and you played 3 SEC teams on the road, and you fared fairly well. So this App State defense isn't anything compared to those teams that you've played in a hostile environment. So, to me, I agree with you. I'm on the dog side of this with the motivation, with the quarterback against App State, who, lost their top running back after week 5.
Although they plugged in somebody else, and their stats haven't dropped off at all.
Yeah, but there's still people at the end of the year that are missing for the depth against a team that I think is, who doesn't feel that like they want the stock stills to win going out.
This is one of those cases, Dave, where I was on App State. Right now I'm on the fence, and I don't know that this information can be enough to swing me to the other side. You're better off sitting on the sidelines when in doubt. But the handicap for me going into this one was I was looking at Appalachian State.
I would have been too. I mean, on paper, App State's the side. It's one of those games where you have to decide what's more important: the data that can drive you to clearly to the App State side, or the information, which it's tough to assign a number to it.
Right.
But it's just, if it were me, I would not be a happy camper going into this game.
That App State team, like you said, was 3-0 straight up in bowls under Satterfield, and they're off, a 30-something win over Toledo last year in a bowl game.
Yeah, no,
it was the
really,
most dominating bowl win there was.
They're really good.
Yeah.
Okay,
The Penn State game was not a fluke.
No, it sure wasn't.
Going to Penn State and losing in overtime was not a fluke.
There's probably 3 non-Power 5 conference teams this year that are legit top 25s. Fresno
to App. What do you make a line? Neutral.
I'd make Fresno a small favorite.
3?
I don't even want to say without
all right.
having the numbers. But in Central Florida, obviously. Those 3 teams are top 25 teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. What I will do and suggest is, we only got another day, 2 days before the game. We're taping on Thursday night. But see some of the beat writers and get some reactions of what they're getting from the players.
That's where I got it was in the Boone newspaper, whatever the newspapers, Watiga something.
Watiga News, yeah.
I don't know. But the interesting thing to me, by the way, no quotes at all from Ivy.
Yeah.
So that's
got to be something more to it. But I would like to hear some player reactions. And I just go back to the reason I asked you the question about the players is if you remember when Ben Howland was coaching at Pitt in that year. They went through – Pitt had a good team. They were, supposed to go at least Sweet 16, maybe Elite 8. And then all of the rumors were swirling around. He was going to go to UCLA. And he kept saying, coach speak, now I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy where I'm at, da-da-da-da-da. And then when he finally left, he left. The Pitt players went into the AD's office and voiced they wanted Jamie Dixon. And, he was already on the staff. He was the main guy doing the recruiting. He was the more hands-on guy with the players. They liked Jamie Dixon, and they wanted him. Got him the job. He got the job that way.
This guy is not getting the job no matter what they do on Saturday.
Right. So, bad situation. All right, guys, we're going to head on out for a quick break. When we come back, we got some NFL games this week, and boy, all of them got some implications. We'll talk about that next. Got 4 good NFL games we'll talk about next up here on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We are going to head to the NFL, guys. Big week in the NFL this week. Some key games, and we're going to start it off with a game, Miami at Minnesota. And, when I look at this game and I look at Minnesota and I watched that game on Monday night and I look at Kirk Cousins, all I could think of, and we've all done it in our day, I remember my early midlife crisis when I bought my Corvette back in Pennsylvania. It's the most stupidest purchase ever because you only got about 3 months to really enjoy a Corvette in Pennsylvania with the snow and the rain and the slush. After you buy something, you have buyer's remorse. That's all I can think of when I look at Kirk Cousins. You got to have buyer's remorse. Really, seriously. How much of a difference between Kirk Cousins and Case Keenum for the money you spent?
Maybe. Might even be a negative difference. Might be a minus even because Cousins cannot win a game against a winning team. He's now 8-21 lifetime against winning teams. Terrible numbers. And by the way, he's facing a team that you can say they shouldn't be a winning team. They shouldn't on paper. But the Dolphins are playing some pretty good football. And the Dolphins, if they can go in and get an upset here, and I know that's a tall order, but if they get an upset here, they're probably going to make the playoffs.
They're the worst 7-6 team in the history of the NFL.
So maybe Cousins has his chance here to get to 9-21 against winning teams because it would count.
You look at Ralph. You look at Miami. They come in here the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, they absolutely stole a game from Buffalo. And God bless them. I was on Miami, and I cashed the ticket, snuck out of the casino before anybody wanted to take their money back. But last week, again, they were going to cover.
Yes.
They were going to cover. So forget all of that. But the last play to get the outright win, the Miami Miracle, and going into Minnesota – this is the season for Minnesota. The division's over. That's what they were playing for Monday night. They still have they control their own destiny as far as the wild card goes, and they got the leg up. Seattle's got the top seed locked up, but they've got the edge right now, half a game edge over the rest of the pack. And, they started right here at home. They're a different team at home. Can they get this job done? You're paying a tariff if you want Minnesota.
Well, Miami gets up for New England, no question. Miami is 0-3 straight up in ATS after upsetting New England. I know different teams, different years. They're also 1-8 ATS just after playing New England. The team gets up. One thing I do want to mention for the Dolphins fans, Tannehill, who, people picked on early, is now 12-4 straight up his last 16 starts. It's been over a couple seasons, but that's a damn good record. I mean, you want to talk about a team who's taken a Miami team and won 12 games. Yes, there's been fortunate wins, but still, you're 12-4 straight up your last 16 games. To me, I'm looking one way on this game, and that's on the under. Minnesota allows 370 yards per game on the road, 270 yards per game at home. The noise makes a difference. We saw the noise in Seattle. Inside the Minnesota Dome, it's even louder. You have Miami, who's 1-10 their last 11 road games straight up. They're a different team on the road. I think this is – and Zimmer, by the way, for those Minnesota fans, Zimmer is 14-3 against the spread off a straight-up loss, 7-0 ATS at home off a straight-up loss. So sides for both point, but I look at the under. Miami's offense can't move it against Minnesota's defense. Minnesota's offense struggles no matter who they're playing. Minnesota's 1-8 to the under their last 9 at home.
I can't disagree with you, Ralph, on the total there, but I'm going to look at the Minnesota side. I'm not going to lay the 7 points here. I think this is a team that if you're going to play this game, I think they get the win at home. I'm not going to pay the extra price. I'm going to bring them down to -1 on a teaser. They'll be hooked up. I think there's a lot of good teaser opportunities this week in the NFL with key numbers that you can use in teams in certain situations. And let's not forget Minnesota this week. I always love it when a coach is feeling a little bit of heat. Somebody's got to go.
Yep.
It's not going to be me. It's going to be somebody else. So they rolled the offensive coordinator, fired him, and this is a guy that's been getting – his name has been circulating as one of the hot prospects. What are they looking at? Have you watched his offense this year? It's gone backwards.
Marco, sorry, Dave. One thing I want to mention for our listeners is you talked about this as a team you want to tease and you may get it down to 1, or let's say it's a half, or let's say it's in that range. There are a lot of times when you get much better odds by parlaying the money lines instead of teasing them down. So if you're in that scenario, always take a look at what your parlay the money lines are instead of teasing them down when you're in that 6 or 7 range, and you may get much better odds on that.
Usually when you're if you're using a 6-point teaser because you're laying less juice, if you're using a 7-point teaser, then it is definitely play to look at. But a very good point.
A different line as well.
Because that's one thing. The money lines all over town, you'll see discrepancies on those. Dave, you were going to add something?
Well, yeah, I mean, the sharp money showed early on the Dolphins in this game, and I think with good reason. You can talk all you want about the Vikings having that great home field advantage with the crazy, noisy crowd. Are they going to be crazy noisy with the fact that this team now qualifies as a disappointment? Okay, this is a season where the Vikings went into the season as one of the hot picks, particularly among their home fans, to get to the Super Bowl.
Because of Cousins.
They were favored to win the division. They have not delivered on their promise, and now the best they can do is a wild card because they're pretty, they're basically out of it as far as the division's concerned. I guess mathematically they're still technically alive, but that's not going to happen. So you've got kind of a down situation as far as that goes. We already talked about Cousins' inability to beat anybody who's got a winning record, and the Dolphins. Look, with all due respect to the past numbers, they weren't under this coach. And this coach is overachieving with this team. This is a team that on paper is not very good. They're a mediocre team on paper. They're 7-6, and if they get an upset win here, they're probably going to be in the playoffs. He's a Coach of the Year candidate to me, despite the fact that the people in South Beach are like, he's terrible. Local fans always they're the worst when it comes to their coaches because they focus in on every single mistake that gets made and blow it completely out of proportion. Even the Red Sox fans did that with Alex Cora during the regular season. It's like, how could he make that move? Shut up, okay? He's fantastic. I think the Dolphins have a chance here. It's not going to be on my card because it doesn't fit the parameters that I am sticking with because they just keep on winning. But opinion, Dolphins plus the points.
We pick on Cousins, and yes, he's looked horrible, but a lot of quarterbacks that aren't the elite quarterbacks, the Mahomes, the Bradys, the Breezes, are going to struggle when your rush game is number 30th, gaining 85 yards per game.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the next one. This is an interesting game for several reasons. One, because if you're a situational guy, this situation screams for the dog. If you're a guy that looks at just the numbers, you can't do it. So you're going to have to draw where you want to go. Do you want to take the situation with the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers getting points against the team coming off the biggest win in that franchise in a long time on prime time, or do you want to go with this absolute beast of a defense, the Chicago Bears?
And that's the quandary in this game. And to me, that's why this is a strong pass for me. Because situationally, even with the revenge factor built in for the Bears, from that week 2 thing where they blew the big lead, they basically achieved their goal on Sunday night when they knocked off the Rams. So situationally, it's not good for them. And look, Green Bay has a new lease on life as far as they're concerned. They still think they can win out and make the playoffs. Whether they can or not remains to be seen. But they certainly know they have to win this game to have any chance. So you're going to get a Packers team that's very fired up. But then you look at the data on the game, and it's just undeniable that Chicago is by far the right side as far as the data is concerned. So to me, when I've got that much of a conflict between situation and numbers, I'm just staying out of the game. If I had to bet it, I still don't know what I would do. I don't know. I guess that's why the pass option, none of the above, is what I'm voting here.
You have a Green Bay team that's lost 8 straight games on the road. I mean, that's just you're playing bad football.
But they're 0-0 under this coach.
Correct.
I mean, coaching means so much.
We saw what the Browns did with Freddie Kitchens at OC. Now Baker Mayfield's back to being number 4 quarterback rating in the league. I mean, and Kitchens had never called plays before, so you don't know what people are going to do. I exactly agree. Kitchens had been a quarterback coach, wide receiver coach, but he had never been an OC and called plays. Boom, he's the interim OC, and all of a sudden the Browns look like a real team.
And by the way, this is an audition for Philbin. It is. I mean, if the Packers win out, he's got a chance to get that job. I don't think he's the favorite. But if they win out, how are you going to fire him? So you got tremendous incentive on the Green Bay side here, Marco.
You do, but how about the only reason we keep saying with Green Bay is because of the situation with Chicago. Do you negate the letdown because it is a rivalry game? Chicago-Green Bay's rivalry, and the fact that Green Bay has absolutely owned Chicago's soul. 22-5 straight up the last 27 games in this series. And I don't know the last time Chicago beat them. Does that negate it at all?
Yeah.
The way they blew the first game.
From a situational standpoint, I think the case is more to be made for Green Bay because they've got this new life in them with McCarthy, who had clearly lost the team. I think it's situationally stronger for the Packers than a negative for the Bears. I think there is some negative for the Bears, but there's also some positive. They want to keep on winning, and they've got the revenge thing. So
it's a tough spot.
I look at the Bears' revenge, and I think it's defense because that was Mac's first game. You send Favre out, you're injured. You have the halftime lead.
You always call him Favre.
Yeah,
you call it Rodgers Favre as much as I call the Chargers San Diego.
Yeah, but you're in your first year or second year doing that. And Favre,
early set of all Favre's setting in.
Favre's like, what, 70?
But, the Bears have a legitimate home field edge with this defense. They're 7-1 ATS their last 8, and they remember what happened in that game with Rodgers coming back in the second half and beating them.
Willis Reed coming out of the locker room at halftime.
It was huge.
Yeah.
I think that Mac and the crew have this game circled and to come out strong early. So
I think that the defense is going to prevail here. As long as Trubisky doesn't have the bad game. Ooh. If Trubisky has some turnovers, then the defense isn't going to be able to overcome that. And you mentioned Mac in that first game. That was the first game. He was only in the Chicago camp for 2 weeks, 10 days? Because he signed late in the preseason. So, he was still a force in that first game. He'll be even more of a force now, I think. To me, I lean to Chicago. As I said in the Minnesota game, this is another game that's a candidate sitting at 6, using the 6-point teaser. I can get this down to a pick 'em and just, pick the winner. And I even said it to you when we did videos the other day. If your life depended on it, you had to play this game, would you feel more confident teasing Chicago to pick to win or Green Bay to plus 12?
And we went opposite.
You went Green Bay with the 12 because you don't think the offense of Chicago can get the separation from them. And it is that is a good one. I mean,
look, this is a fun game.
Yeah,
it really is. And it'll be a big betting game at the windows, but it'll be it'll be a big betting game for the general public more than it will be for serious bettors.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to. You got 2 hot ball clubs, and we just talked about a situational play in the last one. I think situational play is what rules this next one as well. You got Dallas traveling to Indianapolis. If you look at the numbers, Ralph, I'll start with you on this one. Dallas right now is playing as good as anybody in the NFL. 5 straight wins, and there's no coincidence about it. It's right there in front of you why they've won 5 games in a row. This has been a totally different team since they got Amari Cooper. Everybody squawked about giving up a number 1 for him and everything else. 5-game winning streak, and they gave away a number 1. I think it was well worth it because it's changed the entire team on both sides of the football, and we talked about that last week. Ralph, but they're coming off the monumental win. They're not going to change their position, I think, as far as the seedings go. They got the division, but because they had such a bad start, there's so many teams ahead of them as far as seeding goes. They got to just be happy after the Philadelphia win. If there's ever going to be a spot to relax or catch your breath, this is the spot for Dallas.
Well, you say Dallas has all the numbers and they're playing well. Indy is only one of 3 teams in the NFL with a top 10 offense and top 10 defense. So you look at this team and you don't think Indy has a defense, but they've played very well.
Shocking.
I mean, Luck's playing as good as he has, and you got to remember, Indy's head coach, Frank Reich, was the Philly OC. He's 2-0 against NFC East teams already this year, beat Philly and covered against Washington or vice versa. So he knows this personnel, knows how to handle it. And here's an angle as well to go with this game. NFL teams that won and covered in overtime are 6-23 the next week as a dog against the spread. And it makes sense. You're at home. Dallas was home for 3 straight games, win a game in overtime against a division foe. Now you travel against a team that's playing at least even with you, that you're a dog or better than you. I think the Colts, I think there's value with the Colts.
Dave, we've pounced on a lot of coaches this year during radio shows we've done together, podcast videos. This is one where Frank Reich, we could make a case for about 4 or 5 coaches in the NFL this year that should have consideration for Coach of the Year because
he's in the hunt. Yep.
He took over a team that was dismal last year. Now, granted, they were without Andrew Luck, but nobody knew what Andrew Luck was going to be coming back this year. He preseason, he didn't look like, it was like watching him is like, oh man, this is going to be a long year. They don't have an offense.
Couldn't throw the ball 30 yards.
Yeah. He's lighting it up
boy,
right
is
now.
he ever.
How bad was Chuck Pagano as a head coach?
Well, look, it's certainly working out for Reich. And remember, he gave away 1 game earlier in the year.
Against Houston.
Yep. And it's not a great spot for Dallas in terms of them having to win the game. They can relax a little bit here. But that's when a team gets beat. So I would look at the Indianapolis side here. I think the schedule benefits them, and I expect a good performance.
I'm going to make it unanimous here. I like the way the Colts are playing. They had the one bad game at Jacksonville. They come right back against a very hot Houston Texan team. They put points up. Houston jumped out 7-0 right away in that game. In playing on the road, when the home team jumps out, first drive goes down the field, gets that touchdown, you could take all of the wind out of yourselves, but they didn't. They didn't panic. They came back. They had control of that game the entire way. And, I'll throw out my favorite saying, Ralph, with the Dallas Cowboys. After winning the game against Philadelphia, it locked up the division. They've won 5 in a row. They're feeling fat and sassy, heading out on the road, and a game doesn't mean anything to them. This is a spot for Indy, and I'll take it. The line, there were some 2.5s out there, but they're pretty much all gone. You're looking at a solid 3. right now. And I think if you want Indy, now's the time to do it. Get them minus the 3. All right, guys. Can't do the NFL this week without doing this game. And, Dave, are you going to fuck me over again with your New England Patriots in Pittsburgh?
Look, Ralph's going to throw the stat out in a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because Ralph's got all these things on the Patriots.
And I've heard your stat making the rounds this week, everybody. And it's a hell of a stat.
Well, I'll take a shot and say that O will be gone after this game. I think the Steelers are going to win.
I didn't think I was going to hear that from you. Okay.
I'm not writing the Steelers off yet. I know a lot of things have gone wrong for them, but they're back home. They play better in this stadium, to put it mildly, than they do on the road. And, look, I'm seeing the same thing out of the Patriots almost every week, which is their defense is really shaky, and it gets way worse when they go on the road. I know they lost on a fluke last week, and they're going to be ready to come back from that. And they are. I mean, the Patriots aren't going to roll over and die because they had a bad loss to Miami, and it wasn't that disastrous of a loss. They're still in command to win that division, and, they're going to win the division. But, I think the value here is with Pittsburgh. My projections, and I hate to just keep harping on these, but they've been so good in both the colleges and the pros that when I see them like this, it's an automatic take for me. I got the Steelers winning the game on the projections, and they're the home dog. And the Steelers,
the wrong team's favored, in my opinion. The wrong team is a favorite.
Well, to me, that's the bottom line to me is because you can make strong cases for the Patriots in this situation. I mean, you can't make a stronger case. You can make strong cases for the Steelers in this situation. I'm going to go with the numbers in this game, which say that the value is clearly with Pittsburgh, and I'll bank on that and go with the Steelers plus the points. And that will be one of my plays this weekend.
You know what? They're one of the biggest home road dichotomy teams there are. And, there's a couple, that Joe's angle we used a couple times where the Steelers now are 0-21 under when on the road against a team that passes 34 times. It happened again this past week. I think it's 0-22 now. Now, there's some great angles here, and this Patriots angle is 20-0. But, I want to preface it by saying 20-0 doesn't mean you automatically bet it.
No.
If you like a team, yes, you can lean more that way. But there's still reasons to bet against another team, and that is simply this. It's one of the easiest systems angles there is. New England off a loss. The next week they're getting points or they're a small favorite or 3 or less. And Brady and Belichick have been dynamite. They're 20-0 against the spread. But this Steelers team at home, average score at home, 35-26. They score in the red zone when they're at home. They get on the road. They don't score in the red zone. Average score 23-21. They're actually averaging more yards on the road, scoring 23 points, than they are at home, scoring 35 points because they
which do you want? You want the efficient team or the one that wastes the yards? Look, you can make a case. This is why total yards, it's a stat I barely look at. Unless you
have to look when they happen.
Well,
a lot of it's garbage yards.
The points that come out of those. I mean, you can make a case.
Between the 20 yards, there's a lot of teams that do that.
You can make a case based on yards that Tampa ought to be one of the better offenses in the league. They put up huge yards every week. Right. They can't score. It's kind of like the shots on goal stat in hockey. It's an overrated stat. Oh, boy, this team, look at they had 50 shots on goal. How many went in? Yeah. Okay, if you're not getting good shots on goal, then it's kind of a misleading stat. The Steelers, at home, when they get their drives, they score. That's better than moving the ball between the 20s and not scoring.
Here's what I'm going to say about this game. First of all, with New England, I've never seen a schedule the way that their schedule folded out this year. They have played all of their road games in back-to-back road games. They've never had like a home, then back at home, back out on the road. They opened the season at home, then they went Jacksonville and Detroit, lost both of those games. The Jacksonville game, huge revenge game for Jacksonville, and then the very next week they got to play on a Sunday, I think it was a Sunday night game, against Patricia and the Lions, and they lose that game. Then they have 3 in a row at home. Again, 2 straight games on the road. They played Chicago, 38-31. Chicago should have beat them in that game. They had some key plays in that game. I think there was
Game ends with the ball at the Patriots 1.
On that Hail Mary that the guy catches. But there was a couple special teams plays that kept the Patriots in that game, and then they beat Buffalo. That was the week, if you remember, when they played Buffalo. They went down to the unemployment line and saw Derek Anderson down there, signed him to come in and play off the street, and they needed a pick six late in that game to get the cover, to preserve the cover on that Monday night.
Well, even last week, Marco, everybody's talking about the final play. The Patriots were only ahead because of 2 blocked punts.
Yeah, and every time they scored, Miami answered the score. Their defense never stopped Miami in that game. And here's the thing now. Second week in a row on the road. This is their 4th road game in 5 weeks. 6th road game in 8 weeks. That takes its toll, and we talk about teams not being the same. New England's not been the same team on the road that they've been at home this year. They've been vulnerable.
This is not as good a New England team as we've seen in almost all recent years. They're still good, but they're not the best team in the league anymore.
In Pittsburgh right now, everybody is, overreacted to the 3 losses. Let's stop for a second and say, do you realize that all 3 losses, all 3 games, and this is why I have high blood pressure and I'm bald, all 3 games have been decided in the final 20 seconds of the Steelers, the last 3 games.
And Roethlisberger making mistakes.
Oh, he's made some big mistakes.
Yeah,
look,
the touchdown last week that he did get in should have been intercepted. Again, he threw it was the Seattle play from the Super Bowl a few years ago.
It was a terrible play.
Yeah.
And I will say this. I mean, the worry here is that you can't lose to Oakland, okay? That's not a team that's playing well right now. So if the Patriots go in and beat him, it's not like I'm going to be shocked.
No. And for Bill Belichick, it seems like every December they come to Pittsburgh or we go to New England, and I look at the hoodie on the sideline, and it's always seems like a few weeks before Christmas, and he's the Grinch that steals my Christmas every year, Belichick, because Tomlin can't beat him.
5 straight, right?
Yeah. Tomlin he owns Tomlin, but I'll tell you what, I just think that finally – the stock, when you talk about it, I think people have overreacted to the last 3 weeks, and people are still saying, oh, my New England lost on the last play of the game. It was a fluke. Well, you know what? You should have lost the game before that. You were lucky to be in that position. All right, guys, great stuff there. We're going to step out. Quick break. When we come back, best bet time. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's best bet time. Before we get to this week's best bets, got a special offer for you guys. 30-day package at WagerTalk. Pick your favorite capper. Get 30 days. It's normally $325, but you can get it right now for just $225 when you use coupon code TV225. That's TV225. Guys, this is the best time to jump on a 30-day package. Starting this Saturday with the bowl games, there's going to be football, guys, every day from now till New Year's Day, except I think one day. I think there may be one day that there's not a game. So you got college bowl action, NFL action. You've got daily NBA, college basketball, hockey, soccer. Pick your favorite capper. That averages out to just $7.50 a day when you use coupon code TV225. Pick up 30 days for $225. All right, guys, let's head into the best bets. Dave, you've got a bowl game for us. What do you got?
Free play that I posted at WagerTalk, so I'll use it as the best bet here as well, and that is the Camellia Bowl, Eastern Michigan +3 or better, as they take on Georgia Southern. Eastern Michigan plus the points.
All right, we're going to go to Ralph. What do you got, Ralph?
You know what, I want to just jump back and add one little note to Dave's play. The Joe's angle of the day today was Eastern Michigan 18-3-1 against the spread as a dog. So Creighton's done an incredible job keeping that team. They don't turn the ball over, and they play solid. So moving to mine, it's going to be a game we talked about, and it's the Las Vegas Bowl, and excited to go to this game and watch it. And again, a different dynamic with the Mountain West team being favored, but this Fresno State team deserves to be favored. They're 19-6-1 against the spread since Jeff Tedford took over. You see an Arizona State team that's played better than expected, and a lot of people didn't expect them to do well with the coach hire, but they've gotten them there. They had that comeback win against Arizona to get them to this bowl. And while people may say they're disrespected to be a dog to Fresno State, I think when it comes down to it, when your best player already has declared to go to the draft and is not playing, you have a situation there where they're going to struggle against this defense. This Fresno State defense is a legitimate Power 5 defense, just happened to be playing in the Mountain West.
All right, I can't say I don't agree with you there, Ralph. I'm going to go to the game we just talked about in the last section, and that's the Pittsburgh-New England game. This is the spot for me where I just think the Steelers are going to get the job done. The Steelers come into this one. They should, in my opinion, be the favorite in this game. The public and Vegas is overreacting, plus the fact these are two very public teams. But when it comes down to it, the betting market, the Patriots are always the team that gets the money, and Vegas knows that, and I think that's why they've got New England as the favorite. They want to make sure, because if they would have made Pittsburgh a 1 or 2 point favorite, they would have been writing teasers from the day they opened the book of the numbers up until the game kicked off. Everybody would have been teasing New England up over the touchdown. So that's why they did it this way. I understand it. And really, whenever you're -1 or 2, as far as the straight side goes, the straight bets, what's the difference if you're +1 or -1? It's basically the same time. You can remember, Ralph, back in the old days, remember the old tickets that used to be -3 both ways when you would get the parlay cards and stuff? Yeah. They would stick it to you.
Oh, to be a bookie back then.
Yeah.
One thing about the game, Mark, was that, that game was actually higher and it's come down, and I think it's really going to be, we had Jason Simbal on from CG on the radio, and earlier when we talked to William, thank you. Again, brain dead on there.
Yeah.
It's a game where the pros are on Pittsburgh, and that's why we've seen that line move come back down. It would look like it was going to fly to 3 earlier this week, but
you can't do that.
Sharps came back down, bet Pittsburgh, and we know the public, and we all know Brady off a loss. Everyone has some New England off a loss stat,
right,
and it's all good. So right away, the public always favors New England on that. I think this is one where it really is pros versus Joes, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and everybody's saying, Pittsburgh, how could you lose to the Raiders? Well, you know what? The history was Pittsburgh always loses to the Raiders. We talked about that going in. The last Pittsburgh quarterback that beat the Raiders was Neil O'Donnell. That's going back a long time, and we all know that New England always struggles with Miami, yet when they lost to Miami, nobody's making any bones about them losing to Miami. It was a fluke play, but they didn't play well that entire game. But they're really riding the Raiders' loss with the Steelers hard.
Marco, and again, we talked about it in Handicappers Corner. It's one of those situations. We talked about those teams off a loss as a favorite, like Pittsburgh was, and the line this week is between the threes, +3 and -3. September through November, those teams covered 47.6% of the time. In December, since 2010, those teams covered 60.3% of the time. So, again, Handicappers Corner working out for your best bet.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap things up, guys, for this week. I want to thank our guest tonight, William Bernanke, joining us from CG Analytics. Big thanks to my guys in the studio, Ralph Michaels and Dave Cokin. Mark Seidel for making sure we sound good. He runs the control board for us. Big shout out to our man in Detroit, Johnny Detroit. He takes this podcast and makes sure it is available everywhere. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen on Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and last but not least, thanks to you guys, our loyal listeners. We truly appreciate you taking the time to tune in each week to listen to us. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Until next week, let's cash some tickets.